All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to LSU's Gubernatorial Election Forum. We've got an exciting bill to get through here, so let's get the candidates out on stage. First up, we have Dr. Sean Wilson. Mr. Stephen Wagasback. State Treasurer John Schroeder. State Representative Richard Nelson. Mr. Hunter Lundy. And Senator Sharon Hewitt. All right, let's give everyone a round of applause before we begin. All right, well, thank you all for being here tonight, and thank you to DebateLSU for putting this together and asking me to moderate. I'm Bess Casserly, and I'm excited to be here as we come to a bit of a crossroads in our state's future. Candidates, thank you for this opportunity to get to know each of you a little better. This forum will cover 4 major topics as well as opening and closing statements. Each candidate will be given 3 minutes for opening statements. Following those statements, each candidate will be given 2 minutes to respond to each topic question. Please do not speak longer than this. Due to the event being a forum and not a debate, candidates are expected to not comment on each other negatively or interrupt responses. Following the 4 major topics, if there is time, additional topics will be introduced with the same procedures as the original 4 topics. Finally, candidates will be given 1 minute to give closing statements. The goal is for each candidate to be heard by the people of Louisiana. With that being said, let's begin. We will follow a snaking alphabetical order for responses tonight, meaning our opening statements will be done in alphabetical order, and then our first topic will be done in reverse alphabetical order. So, Senator Hewitt, will you please start off our opening statements? And as a reminder, you have 3 minutes.
Well, thank you very much for hosting us tonight. It's great to be back home in my alma mater. You know, I was thinking about channeling my inner Kim Mulkey, but my feather, coat was in the dry cleaners. No, it's great to be here, and I'm so proud of all the things that are happening here at LSU. I wanted to tell you a little bit about myself and about the things that I care about, the things that I've done, and the things that I plan to do as your next governor. I grew up in Lake Charles, and then I did come to school here at LSU and got a mechanical engineering degree. And back in that time, and it's probably still not that different, there really weren't women in mechanical engineering. And then I went to work for Shell in the offshore drilling and production business and spent my first year on a drilling rig, which was the training program back in the day. And I remember my very first day of work flying offshore on this helicopter, and I walked into the quarters where the foreman is, and there's about 200 men that work on these offshore drilling rigs. And I was kind of nervous about how am I going to know who's the foreman and who's the guy in charge. Well, it was easy because he was like the biggest, baddest, burliest guy in the room. And I stuck my hand out to introduce myself, and he kind of glared at me and he said, "There's 2 problems with the oil business." And I'm thinking, this is great. I'm going to get my great first nugget of information. There's 2 problems with the oil business. The first is O-rings. Those are the black elastomers that keep your garden hose from leaking. And the second problem is women. Well, I'd never been compared to an O-ring before, so I thought this is going to be a great career. And it was. Fast forward over 20 years. I was managing Shell's Central Deepwater Gulf of Mexico business, billions of dollars in assets, hundreds of employees, and walked away from all of that because our 3rd grader was struggling with his multiplication tables, and I thought that it was my fault. I was traveling too much and felt like I needed to come home and be a full-time mom and be more present. And so we tightened our belt, and I did that. And then when our sons grew up and went to college and got jobs, I began thinking about what's next for me, what makes me happy, and felt like our state was heading in the wrong direction. And that if good people didn't run, we were never going to fix the problems in our state. And so I ran for the state Senate. I've served there for 8 years as the Senate Majority Leader. I chair the Senate Governmental Affairs Committee. I've passed a record-setting number of bills that are all focused on the things that I'm campaigning on as governor: a better education for our kids, good high-paying jobs, safe neighborhoods, affordable insurance, a booming economy, and a government that works for the people. Bottom line is I want to create a Louisiana that gives families a reason to stay in Louisiana instead of a reason to leave. And I look forward to talking to you some more about my plans to do just that.
All right, thank you, Senator Hewitt. Let's move on to Mr. Hunter Lundy. All right, Representative Nelson.
KLSU after graduating, got a degree in biological engineering, then did 3 years. Wasn't done with LSU football, so I went to LSU Law School. And I spent 3 more years at LSU Law, graduated top of my class. And then I joined the Foreign Service, U.S. Department of State. Moved up to Washington, D.C., go other places for opportunity. I was able to come back and I said, well, I'm going to try and do something about it. So I ran for office in 2019. The second question I normally get is, well, you're a young guy in politics in Louisiana, what did your dad do? You know, my dad was an IRS agent, which is about the opposite end of popularity from a politician. So we had a lot of work to do to get elected, but we were able to do it. But when we got elected as back to the State House of Representatives, I said, we're going to focus on the major problems. Well, did you know that if Louisiana was just average, if we were just average in the country, we'd all live 4 years longer and get a 33% raise. That is the cost of bad government. 4 years of your life and a 33% raise. Guess what? You drive across the border to Texas, guess what you become? Average. You get 3.5 years of your life back and a 33% raise. That's a tragedy. Well, how long has that been going on? Well, does anybody know the last time Louisiana added a congressional seat? The last time we actually grew faster than the rest of the country. It's 1910. 1910, over 100 years ago. So a guy named Huey Long was governor of Louisiana back then, and he said, I'm going to change Louisiana. I'm going to put all the power in Baton Rouge. I'm going to put all the money in Baton Rouge, and the state capital, and the governor will be the ones that control it. So that's where our problems come from. We really have to look at states like Texas and Florida. They've grown 6 times faster than us in the last 10 years. We need to look at that as a model for government. We need to bring that here to Louisiana and make Louisiana competitive so that kids like you and kids like me can stay here when they graduate and have opportunity. So that's the battles that I fought in the legislature for the last 4 years. I've also fought a lot in education because I have 3 kids and it matters a lot to me. So these are the things that we can do to change Louisiana forever. I'm working on the legislature, and those are battles I'll win as governor. Thank you.
All right, Treasurer Schroeder.
Good evening, everybody. I'm John Schroeder. I'm currently serving as your state treasurer. In November will be the end of my 6th year. I am a United States Army veteran. I served as a 101st Airborne Division. I was in infantry, military intelligence, and CID. My degree is in criminal justice from Southeastern. Shortly before I was 30, my record hemorrhage, and I went from putting bad guys away for a very long time. Coming back to Louisiana with my wife, who's a retired teacher and administrator, assistant principal. She's now a contractor, and embarked upon a business career of over 32 plus years from many different kind of retail, but mostly around real estate development. I'm a real estate company today. I was a licensed contractor. We have 2 kids. Both went to school here. One graduated as a lawyer. The other one, I'm not sure what he did when he was here, but he left and went to nursing school after. Had to find his path, which he did. And he's a nurse. He's a geriatric nurse today, practicing law. I got involved in politics when I was about 47, 48. After that, some success in the business world. Went to Baton Rouge when Bobby Jigger became governor. Did that, served there for 8 years, and I served about 2 years under this current governor, and when I ran for state treasurer, and I've been there now for almost 6 years. Look, one of the reasons I stay involved, I'm 62 years old now. I tell people this is not my career. You know, I've made my livelihood in the business world, and I've brought this experience to politics, which I think business is sorely needed. You see the difference every day. I saw it in Treasury. I saw it in the legislature. You know, why do you do it? Well, why do you do that? Why do you do that? It's the same answer. It's the way we've always done it. Well, the difference between the business world and government, if you're not willing to change and know how to implement change, then you go out of business. But government survives that. I was telling that story at lunch today that government, even when we were in our budget deficits, government grew. Contrary to your way of life. I can just tell you, as treasurer managing last year, $60 billion operation, trust funds of $16 billion. You know, I treat it like a business. I sort of proved to myself that it can operate like a business. Our unclaimed property program went from being in the lower tier to one of the top programs in America. But, you know, I just think that government, right now the state needs a CEO. Somebody's go to work every day, take care of the infrastructure of the state, and I don't mean roads and bridges, but go to work every day, 5 Mondays a week, and move us in the right direction.
Mr. Wagasback.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. My name is Stephen Wagasback. Look, I'll start with saying I wish I could tell you that my 4 years at LSU were the best 4 years of my life, but that would be a lie. I stayed 5 years. And so it was the best 5 years of my life, and for a lot of reasons. It was a great time. Like I lived just down the road, but it was a great 5 years. But I'll tell you also, I met my wife, Colleen, who's in the front row right there, in college. And I would also love to tell you that we met in the library, in the quad, but that also would be a lie. We met on the dance floor of Bogies, if I'm being honest with you. Let's see, we got some Bogies fans out here. But you know, that moment on the dance floor of Bogies turned into that first date on my 21st birthday at the Giulio Brothers. And, you know, we walked in on a random date, and we walked out in the parking lot realizing that we were forever going to be together. And so I tell you that because moments like that are what makes Louisiana special. That's my moment. That's my moment where I can think of why Louisiana is unique. I'm sure you all have your own moment. A big reason why I'm running is that those moments aren't enough anymore. Louisiana is one of the most special states in the country. Our people, our culture, our joie de vivre, it's for so long has been enough to overlook all the stuff we don't do well. Well, in the modern economy, it's not enough anymore. In the post-COVID era, it's not enough anymore. What we've learned over the last 3 or 4 years is people, families, companies, they're on the move. There's an awakening around the country. They are no longer staying in states that are hard to live in, that have bad taxes, that have bad crime, that have bad schools, that have a shrinking economy. They are leaving. We as a state, we sit and laugh at states like California and New York and Illinois and say, look, they're losing all their people. We have to come to terms with the fact that Louisiana is too. We're the only state in the South in the post-COVID era, shrinking in people and shrinking in jobs. It's unacceptable. The good news is this. This is our moment in time. This is our election to rewrite our story, to say that we're going to be both the culture capital of the world and the jobs capital of the world, the career capital of the world, the state that keeps its people and attracts other states. But it takes leadership. It takes policy ideas, and we're going to talk about the policies all day long, and I want to talk about them all day long. But at the end of the day, it's about leadership. It's about who's that quarterback you're going to elect to go in that huddle. Remember the Joe Burrow season? Remember 2019? It was magical. I sat through a lot of bad football in that stadium over the last 50 years. I'm telling you, a lot of bad football. You all don't realize how good it was. It's not until you get the right quarterback in the huddle that it all comes together. This is our moment. Louisiana cannot miss this opportunity. The South is booming. If we do the right things, put the right policies forward, put the right quarterback in the huddle, absolutely, we can be just like every other state. We can have our cake and eat it too. We can't just have the random good moments at LSU and think back to those days. Every day can be a glory day for us, but it has to happen this fall on October 14th.
All right, finally, Dr. Wilson.
So good evening, and thank you all for hosting us, particularly to the students who had the courage and the wisdom to put this forum together. I wish everyone in this race thought enough of you to be here and spend time, so I want to also thank those who are sitting to my right to be able to do that. You know, it's important to know that my story is not much different than any of your stories. I'm a native of New Orleans. I grew up in a single-family home. My father was still very active in our lives, but my mom raised my brother and I in the shotgun house she still lives in today. I'm a proud product of the public school system in New Orleans. I left there, went to USL, got an undergraduate degree in planning, and had the opportunity to serve as student government president and learn the power of what it meant to be in leadership. I also had the privilege of serving on the Board of Trustees for the University of Southwestern Louisiana and the entire Board of Trustees system. Went on to school after meeting my wife, who is a teacher. She's here with me tonight. She's an assistant principal, a 23-year educator. We started our family in Lafayette. My daughter's a social worker in the public school system. My son's going in ministry, and I've got 2 beautiful grandkids and a son-in-law that's a fireman. I've worked in this business of government for 25 years under Republican and Democratic leadership. I've seen the good days and I've seen the bad days, and I've seen the changes over time when we can do things. I've also seen the same situations we're dealing with today. Because in the election in 2003, we saw the brain drain. We talked about these issues that we're still dealing with today. I retired on March 5th of this year after 25 good years of making a difference in the state of Louisiana, the last 7 as Secretary of Transportation, where we spent $5.5 billion, the most we've done in any modern times. I'm running to be governor because I realize it's time for us to do the sustainable types of investments we need. And very simply, there are four things. We need someone who's going to work to make us safer, someone who's going to work to make us smarter, healthier, and wealthier. Those are the things that every family thinks about when they sit down and have dinner or when they say their prayers at night, is they want the best for their children. They want the best for their families. I'm the only candidate with the experience of working with Republicans and Democrats and independents all across this state, from legislative leaders to local governments to small towns to big towns. Regardless of race, economics, or zip code, I've been able to be productive for you. I've done it with transparency. I've done it with integrity. I've done it with a commitment to put the people of Louisiana first, and not the politics, not the parties, but the people, because that is what makes us great. If we want to change the trajectory of who we are as a state, it's got to start with us, and it's going to start with leaders, and it's not going to be just about me. It'll be about we in a Wilson administration, because that is the only way we overcome these challenges that we see in this state, in this nation, is if we work together in a bipartisan fashion. I'm Sean Wilson, the only candidate committed and has done this for 25 years, working to make this state a better place to live. I don't plan on going anywhere. I'm here to work for you and with you to make this a better state.
All right, let's move into our topics. Our first topic of the night is something most of you are very acutely aware of, which is the young college-educated Louisianans leaving Louisiana for other opportunities, specifically to neighboring states like Texas, Florida, or Georgia. As new job opportunities continue to emerge in the South, it's crucial for Louisiana to remain competitive and ensure its own growth and development. Could you please outline your plan for encouraging young people and college graduates to stay in the state? Furthermore, do you intend to attract new industries and job opportunities to our state, ensuring that Louisiana is not left behind? And we are going to begin with Dr. Wilson. You have 2 minutes to respond.
Well, no one's going to deny that we're losing some of the best and the brightest, and we've been doing this for years. This isn't anything new. It's not as though we woke up and said, look, people are leaving. We've seen this for some time, so absolutely this is an issue. But it's important for us to look at the entire picture. Why are people leaving? What's attracting them to the places they're going? And what can we absolutely do to make a difference? It's not the food, it's not the festivals, it's not the football, it's certainly not the fishing. But it's the culturally rich place that we have that people want to be here in Louisiana. Of all the students I met tonight before this event, half of them says after graduation, I am going to go find a job where I can earn a living. It's about wages. It's about creating economic opportunity for individuals to set themselves and their future families on a course for success. We are burgeoning on our campuses with talent, but it's important that we bring them back and we create economic opportunities for them. And it's going to start with a good paying job, particularly a job that they've been trained to do. When you look at how we have led in Baton Rouge from a government perspective, we're actually doing the exact opposite. We're creating divisive environments that run people away. Think about that. The extreme policies that we're having in Baton Rouge are causing people to leave, in part because we highlight the negatives and not accentuate the positives. When you want a safer place, people want to be safe, particularly young people. They want to have a healthy environment. They want to have a place where they can grow a family and that they have an educational system that they don't have to have the burden of paying extra tuition to go to a private school. And that's no different than others that want to come to Louisiana. It's important for us to build a workforce to attract people, but we've got to make the sustainable investment so that all of the new energy markets that want to come to Louisiana, they will make that commitment when they see a workforce that no one is going to work harder than folks from Louisiana. Those are the things that we can do. Recognizing that we've traveled across this state 40,000 miles, it's what we hear. People want good wages, they want good opportunities, and they want a place that they can be proud of. And it's going to start with sustainable policies in Baton Rouge to make us safer and smarter.
Mr. Wagasback, you have 2 minutes.
You know, the brain drain's very personal to me because when I was a kid, we were one of those families. This was in the 80s. My dad was out of work for a while because of a failed economy. My mom had to quit her school teaching job to start a store that also went under during the 80s failed economy. And one day I came home from school and Dad said, good news and bad news. I got a job. The bad news is it's in St. Louis, Missouri. So we were one of those families that left in the 80s, and it was hard. I hated leaving this state, and it's still to this day as a burr in my saddle. But we left for one reason. My dad could not find work here. He had to find work elsewhere. If we want to stop the brain drain, it's not rocket science. You create an economy that is growing, jobs that are there for everyone, white collar, blue collar, high tech, low tech, old energy, new energy. We have to make jobs available for everyone, and that's what we do. If you look at the data of who leaves, there's two types of people that leave this state. It's those 20-year-olds. They leave for a good job. They go to Texas, they go to Dallas, they go to Houston, they go to Nashville. Maybe some of you are thinking the same thing. You're going to leave for the job, but you're going to fall in love with the quality of life there. Because it's not just about jobs. It's creating an environment you want to grow your family in. That's things like bike trails. That's things like taking the litter off of roads and out of the ditches. That's the thing of creating an entrepreneurial energy that you can feed off of, because today's young worker wants the cake. They want to eat it all too. They want everything, the jobs and the quality of life. We have to provide that. The second level of people that leave are the ones that chase the grandkids. It's those that retire, and they say, you know what, we're going to go where my kids went, my kids are. So if we keep the seed corn, Buddy Romer used to always talk about the seed corn. If we keep our seed corn, we create that economy that can keep those 20-year-olds, and then we create the quality of life that keeps them here for the long haul, you won't have to chase your grandkids, Dave, when you get old. That's how you stop the brain drain. It's an environment and an economy that is attractive on day one and stays appealing all throughout your lifetime, so you don't have to leave when you get older.
Treasurer Schroeder.
Thank you. Look, as one of the seniors sitting up here, I know I don't look like I'm 62. That's why I like sitting next to Richard.
Calling me old?
Yeah. No, he just looks old. Look, this isn't about ideas. I mean, they have more studies, more things that you can go read and see. You can go hire all the finest policy people to regurgitate anything you want. In my business world, it comes down to one thing, and it is called leadership. But leaders aren't anointed. Somebody has to follow you for you to be a leader. You aren't a leader unless somebody follows you. And it comes with respect, because in the military and in law enforcement, if you followed the wrong leader, you might have not went home that day or that night. So I take leadership very personally, but I'll be perfectly frank with everybody. This state suffers from a culture, and it's a bad culture. We have a culture of cronyism and corruption. I just finished a 12-month chairmanship of the National Treasurers group that I belong to, and every time cronyism and corruption comes up, they always tend to look towards old Louisiana. But we suffer from that. It's embedded in our infrastructure, not roads and bridges, in our crime problems, in our education problems. And until we decide we're going to start at the foundation and fix this state, I don't care what kind of ideas you have. If people don't trust you, if you're dishonest, and the decisions you make benefit your friends or the cronies, that's our reputation. I saw a survey today. It was crime, cronyism, corruption, and education in a row.
All right, State Rep Nelson.
So we're losing 40,000 people a year, and like I said earlier, the last time Louisiana actually grew faster than the rest of the country was 1910. This is a long-standing problem. We haven't done anything about it. So I brought a package of bills in 2021 that said, hey, let's look at states that are actually growing, like Texas and Florida. They're growing 6 times faster than us. That's where people are moving from Louisiana and from around the country. Well, what do they have? What do we need in order to attract people here? Well, Texas and Florida don't have an income tax. Tennessee doesn't have an income tax. They're some of the fastest growing states in the country. They have been for a long time. And so we don't have to reinvent the wheel. What we have to do is bring what works to Louisiana. So Huey Long had the system. He created the income tax. He actually brought the income tax to Louisiana. He made the state government in charge of where all the money goes, and he based it off of patronage. That's the system we have today. So if you're a local government, if you're a business, you have to go to Baton Rouge, you have to go to the Capitol, and you have to beg to get whatever you need done. That's the fundamental problem that we haven't fixed in over 100 years. That's why we continue to lose. Even though we have more resources than any other state in the country, even though everybody would love to stay here and love to grow up here or love to raise their kids here, they have to leave for better opportunity. And so it's really just a question of government structure and the tax code that really drives that. So I brought this package of bills in 2021. It gets rid of the income tax. It makes a structure like Texas, like Florida, like Tennessee, that is competitive, that will bring people here, that will bring businesses here and keep them here. That's what you have to do, and it's fundamental. It's not just the tax code are going to pull a few levers and it's magically going to get fixed. It's very difficult. We have, pages and pages, hundreds of pages of bills in order to accomplish this. I had a study committee after I brought that package of bills to dive into every aspect of the tax code. We brought a refined package this year. That's really how you fix the problem, because it keeps more money in local communities to solve local problems like crime, like education, like infrastructure, which are really local problems that exist all across this state. It gives locals the ability to fix it, and it doesn't rely on political patronage at the Capitol in Baton Rouge and the office of the governor to fix it. If you don't look at these systems that are actually working, we're never going to fix the problem, and 10 years from now or 8 years from now, we'll be in the same place we are right now. Thank you.
Mr. Lundy.
I'm going to answer your question. First of all, we have the second worst roads in the United States in Louisiana, the second. We have the 7th most fatalities in the United States in Louisiana, most of them due to our roads. We pay auto insurance rates that are extremely high because of our roads. We pay homeowners insurance high, and a lot of that's because of hurricanes. We pay flood insurance that's too high. So most of the people leaving today are middle-income families. All right, median income in Louisiana is $50,000, a little bit more. And so there's a lot of rhetoric going on up here, but we lost the 8th congressional district in the early 90s. It was not long after we passed the lottery. And then we lost the 7th congressional district in 2010. So we've lost 2 congressional districts in population. But think about the storms, think about the cost of roads, think about the cost of insurance. So you need a governor that's going to address the problems and change the problems and move to convince people of the problems, not a lobbyist, not a bureaucrat, not a bunch of politicians. And so we're going to have good jobs. And so I have a vision. One, we're going to this Maritime Academy, that's an academy that was just started this past year for collegiate levels. We can now compete with Texas A&M. We can grow that. We got the best waterways in America. We have to focus on our waterways. We have the best agriculture in America. So we can create a vision for Central Louisiana, North Louisiana. We can use the Maritime Academy. We can create high-tech jobs. And yes, I've said it all, we can have a research triangle. You don't have to go to North Carolina. We can use the architectural graduates, the engineers, the construction managers, all get paid at a level much higher than the $50,000 median income of Louisiana. So you want to know how we're going to do it? We're going to change from service-related jobs. Casinos don't pay much money. Hotels don't pay much money. Restaurants, we don't need to recruit out-of-state restaurants anymore. We have the people, the culture, and the talent right here. Thank you.
And finally, Senator Hewitt.
Look, I get the brain drain. We have 2 sons. One is in Seattle, one is in New York City. You could not be further from Slidell, Louisiana than those 2 cities, and it's because there weren't opportunities for them here. But I do know this. I know that if your state is not thriving, you're nosediving. And that is exactly what has been happening in the state of Louisiana, and it is a lack of leadership. When I talk to business leaders about what would it take for you to come to Louisiana, or why are you leaving Louisiana, here are the things that they tell me. So first of all, they want a fair, stable, simple, predictable tax structure. We don't have that right now in Louisiana, but we can get that. I will eliminate the franchise tax. I will reduce the corporate tax rates, and I will get us to 0 personal state income tax. We have already passed legislation that is putting us on a track to do those things, and that is going to be very well received by the business community, as has been done in North Carolina, one of the states that is booming in terms of their economy. I also know that leaders are always looking for a trained workforce. That's the first question they ask. Do you have the workforce that I need for my business? Because they want to hire local people. And so we have to do a better job of aligning our education system for those jobs that we have here in our state and those jobs that we want to attract. We have to do a better job on infrastructure. Dr. Wilson knows this. Our infrastructure is a D+. It's terrible. Businesses have to have a good way of getting their products in and out, and we have to work on that. And I will double down on investing in infrastructure. We have to reinvent how we deliver economic development by looking forward at the industries that we want to attract and putting the plans in place to do just that.
All right, moving on to our second topic, which will focus on higher education in Louisiana. Currently, 44% of working age adults in Louisiana hold a degree or high-value credential. The Board of Regents wants this figure to reach 60%. U.S. News and World Report ranks Louisiana 49th in the country regarding higher education. As governor, how would you develop higher education in Louisiana and meet the Board of Regents' goal of 60% by 2030? And we're going to flip it and start with Senator Hewitt.
I love the snake approach. So I love the goal, by the way. This is a great goal by Dr. Reed and the Board of Regents. It's very aspirational, and it's not going to be easy to get there. So the first thing we have to do is we have to make education more affordable. The cost of higher education is outrageous, and you've seen the graphs, you all are living it. You know it's very, very expensive. One way to help mitigate the cost is by doing more in high school. Dual enrollment is a great example of that, you know, where you can get a year's worth of dual enrollment, let's say, while you're in high school. Gives you a head start on your college education. That extra year, let's say if you're on TOPS, could go to a master's or, you know, another degree. We also need to offer other pathways to success for those students that don't want to go to college. Industry-based certifications and apprenticeships in high school where you can graduate concurrently with a high school degree and, let's say, an industry-based certification, go right into the workforce. That's going to be very valuable. We're doing some of that. We need to do a lot more of that. We also have to do a better job. The biggest piece of this, and Dr. Reed will admit this, the biggest piece of this is the adult learners. They're generally 27 years old. They have already left school, they have gone into the workforce, they probably have 2 kids, 2 jobs, and they still can't make ends meet. And so what we have to do for those folks, and they don't qualify for all the same grants, Pell Grants and things like that that you all might qualify for, and they can't quite afford the tuition to go back to get a new skill at one of our community technical colleges. So we have to provide financial support for those people, and that is a large part of our population. The Foster Promise program, named after the governor, was put in place by the legislature a couple of years ago, but it's not working very well yet. But that is the tool, the financial tool, to get people the credentials that they need to be able to contribute to the workforce, and I think we can fix that. Thank you.
Mr. Lundy.
This university is very important to the state, but the UL system is as well. During the Jindal Wagasback administration, they took the money out of the UL system. They hurt our education in Louisiana. So we've been hurting ever since. In our colleges, McNeese, Nichols, Southeastern, I can go around the clock, Northwestern, Louisiana Tech, and the other schools, they've almost become private colleges because they're tuition driven now. And so they've costed their way to hurt young people trying to get that college education. So we have to realign our priorities. We need to help kids go to school. Each of those colleges are so important to their communities. And so I agree with Senator Hewitt that we have to, with 800,000 single-parent homes in Louisiana, you know, I've said right up from the beginning that we got to raise the minimum wage. We got to give people hope. And so when you got single-parent homes, you got moms who need to get an education. So we've got to increase, and we started at the legislature this past year, the assisted care for moms to get an education. Maybe it's a community college, maybe it's a trade school, but it might be a college. It may be a university. They need to get that and have that opportunity. So we need to assist that funding and seeing that these single parents can get that education that they deserve and that they want. And so it comes down to priorities. And so we get the money to the UL system. We increase and fight for as many grants as we can. We give every applicable kid entitled to go to college a right to go. As I said earlier, education is probably the most God-given tool that we can have to make it in life. And so we got to make it a priority. We got to start when they're real young, and I'll discuss that later because I'm out of time. But thank you.
All right. Representative Nelson.
Thank you. Yeah, so I would really focus on community and technical colleges. I think they're significantly underfunded. I think that's one of the really untapped resources we have in Louisiana if we really want to address poverty. We really need to go out and get people that are making minimum wage, people that are stuck making $10 an hour or so, and give them the credentials so that they can really go from $10 an hour to $30 an hour, because that's going to change their life. In reality, we have the highest tuition for community and technical colleges in the South, the highest tuition. So these are the people that really need help the most, and we put the biggest barrier in front of them in order to go out there and do something about it. And so I think we really got to reduce tuition significantly so that it's really just they're just paying something so they have some skin in the game to get in, as opposed to a $5,000 price tag to go in and get an associate's degree or some kind of industry certification. It's something that can really change somebody's life. And so I think putting the biggest barrier in front of them so that they can't go out and do that, it really deters a lot of people from ever going and getting that certification. I think if you look at the places and the people that really need it, you really have to have an outreach program so that it educates them on it. And I think the grant programs that we have, the legislature's put them in place over a few years. But if you're making minimum wage and you have children and you have all these other things going on, it's difficult for you to navigate a bunch of grant programs. That's why I think lowering the tuition just so that barrier is gone is the best thing to do. I think the other thing you have to do is provide child care for people, especially when they're working adults. They don't have anywhere for their little kids to go. You need to have it at the school. You need to have it available so that they can go and they can get that job, so that they can go and grow their own income, become productive members of society, taxpayers. That's really what we want. We really want Louisiana to climb out of this generational poverty problem that we have. And I think community and technical colleges are one of the best ways that we can do that and really just give people the tools they need to succeed without a bunch of government intervention. So that's what I would focus on, and I think that's really how you change Louisiana. Thank you.
So when I was in the legislature, probably one of the things that
I gave you some extra time.
Treasurer Schroeder.
All right. When I was in the legislature, probably one of the better things that happened during that time is we made a focus on community colleges. We didn't even call them community college. We changed the names, made a focus on it. I mean, you look what happens in other states like Pennsylvania and other places where you sort of start off at your community college, and because it's cheaper, you can take the same English class at a community college and for a third of the money. And we really haven't progressed well enough on that. But look, man, I'm just going to call it the way I see it. These college campuses tend to be more about the professors and the infrastructure than it is about the kids who go to school there. We don't utilize the technology. I can remember 14 years or so ago when I sat on the education committee, going to Austin, Texas, and watching a presentation about this stuff called online learning. That was 15 years ago. And the only reason we've progressed at all is because of the pandemic. So if the pandemic has brought anything, it's helped Louisiana, forced Louisiana to look at the technology, how we can deliver services better. I've done it as treasurer, and I often say that we're stuck in a Stone Age, and Fred Flintstone has more technology than we do. I believe we have to innovate. I think we have to entrepreneurship our way through some of these things, but we haven't really changed how we deliver a degree in the last 35 or so years. There's no way you can't tell me. My son went to nursing school and went to school every day and graduated in about 18 months. And he was now making a living wage. It takes too long, it's too expensive, and if we're going to improve the numbers, then we're going to have to figure out how to fast track it, and how you can sort of learn online instead of having to sit in a classroom. I think there's a lot of creative and technical ways that we can improve outcomes.
Mr. Wagsback.
You're waiting for the ding, aren't you? You know, every morning in Ascension Parish, there's a school bus that picks up about 350 high school kids from East Ascension, Sandoval, and Dutchtown and brings them to the campus of RPCC, River Parish Community Colleges. Over the course of 4 years, all those kids are going to graduate with a high school degree and an associate's degree. It's that type of mindset that's just beginning in Louisiana that I think a decade from now is going to be commonplace. Credential acquiring is absolutely the right question to have. The question is, what type of credential? Today's worker, today's student, doesn't just want to go and get some general degree and figure life out once they get out. They want to know when they go on day one, what are you teaching me? How does it turn into a job one day? How much does it cost and how long is it going to take? That's what the student wants today. The system has to bend to the needs of the student. So I do think going into the high schools, beginning that acquisition earlier is key for cost and attainment. The truth is, we've got about 20% of our children growing up in poverty each and every year. We've got half of our healthcare system in Medicaid. We've got to do a way to elevate people out of poverty. To do that, you have to give them a better high school experience and show them pathways to prosperity. Dual enrollment, AP, apprenticeship, mentorship, all in that junior, senior year. We can use existing MFP dollars to pay for some of those credentials. So when that kid comes out of high school, not only do they have a better understanding of where they're going to go to complete their education, but also they've brought down the cost of that to a certain extent. The other thing I would say is, it's been mentioned earlier before, folks are right. We have to do a better job of utilizing our community colleges. If you go to states like Texas and North Carolina and Florida, states that we put on a pedestal for having great college systems, they also have a very strong two-year system. A lot of kids leave high schools there, they go to a two-year system, and then they transfer to UT, Florida State, Chapel Hill. There's no shame in that. It's a total average, common way of life. We have to embrace that here and find every pathway for the kid in high school, make it easier for them to attain it, and launch them into a career that they can be proud of.
Dr. Wilson.
Since we're on a campus, we'll talk facts. First, let me just tell you the leading cause of death in the state's not the condition of roads. It has to do with distraction, alcohol, seat belts, as well as speed. We're in a university setting. Let's honor the facts. Second, let me just tell you, higher education is the way to economic prosperity, and it's because of the innovation that we get. It's important for us to get this right. We have to work with the legislature to ensure that we protect TOPS, to ensure that we can fund the system the way it should be funded and not have the burden placed on all of the students and the families. Everybody said this today, that we've made it more expensive for the people who can least afford it. That's why it's important to do the Murphy Foster program and the Go Grant programs we have. But it's also important that we improve the facilities that we have on our campuses, not just universities, but community and technical colleges as well, to give individuals the tools they need to be able to be prepared and teach people the skill sets that they absolutely need. We need to make those investments in high school as well. You talk about academic opportunities. How do we articulate between a community college and a university, or a high school and a community college and a university? Those are absolutely important to have alignment with your curriculums. It's also important that we have a governor that understands that not everybody's going to make it to the flagship. But we also have to acknowledge that we have an HBCU system, that we have independent schools in our state, that we have other private opportunities to educate people, and we have to elevate all of them if we want to serve all of the citizens of this state. I know how important it is not to just cut higher education. I'm not going to criticize who's done it, because I've said before, we've lived with these issues for generations. But as a student government, past student government president at the university, as a student member of the board, as someone who worked at a university, I understand the sacrifices that faculty make. I worked on that campus professionally, and I've also been president of Alumni Association. It's going to take advocacy. It's time that we put our money where our mouth is and invest in the young people and the bright people to build an economy that we want in this state. It's time out for the social media sound bites. It's time out for the political statements. Let's get to real policy and real investment in the state of Louisiana.
All right, our third topic of the night will focus on Louisiana State University. LSU is notoriously behind on building maintenance, interior upkeep, and wages for its faculty and staff. What are your plans to keep LSU as a competitive flagship university and a stronghold in the SEC?
Well, you're waiting for the, okay, there it is. So the most important thing is we've got to be competitive. We cannot maintain our flagship status at this university. We cannot maintain the status of any other institution unless we're competitive. Making investments in the facilities on our campuses are absolutely the first thing we should do. As governor, we'll make sure that we build the deferred maintenance list and that we eliminate it over time in an appropriate, affordable fashion. The fact that LSU has the lion's share of our deferred maintenance ought to be a concern for anyone that is supporting the flagship institution and how it works. Think about that. The university was just named as one of the most beautiful campuses in the country. But inside, we have challenges. We know libraries are struggling. We know we have buildings that don't have what we need. We know the loop system that keeps everything functioning in terms of keeping this place cool and movable is important. It's important that we treat the flagship like a flagship and fund it appropriately. Without that, we can't do it. You should have resources available to build this campus and do the things we need to do. That's why, as governor, I'll make a commitment to ensure that we address what's already here instead of just building everything new. We can go out and find those private resources, but our economy is built on the infrastructure we have. The flagship institution is built on the infrastructure it has, and inside and out, we have to not only accommodate the academic and the athletic prowess, but we also have to build the facilities to ensure that we can continue to have the most modern facilities that will attract people. You only have one opportunity to make a first impression, and that first impression is always a lasting impression. But it's also important, if we want to protect the flagship, we've got to protect faculty, we've got to protect tenure, we've got to protect student leaders, and as governor, and as someone who has been a student leader, I understand what it means to go sit in the governor's office because I did it when we were cutting higher education in the Edwin Edwards terms. I remember during the Jindal years when we were cutting higher education, and that is not a slight at him, but it's the slight at the governor who had the responsibility to make it happen. We need to talk to the people who we need to help. That is how you deal with it, is have relationships and communicate with people.
Mr. Wagasback.
Well, I think the first thing to do to support the flagship agenda is to understand what the flagship agenda is. And I think President Tate, with the Scholarship First agenda, has a great game plan. Now what he needs is a board of supervisors, a governor, and a legislature who understands it and wants to help him implement it. He has identified 5 different categories that the flagship is going to be excellent in, and he needs support from the state and the private sector to get that done. And so he needs board members to understand that. So the first thing I would do is I would put board members on the LSU Board of Supervisors who understands his agenda and helps him get it done, goes out and finds those private sector resources to come in and help do that. We've already seen that with the Energy Center. We've already seen that with some of the coastal investments. We've already seen that with some of the cybersecurity investments that have come in. They've done a good job. We have to take it to another level. If you look at the states and the flagship universities around the country, the ones that bring in big foundation dollars and bring in outside investments are the ones that really elevating their game, and we need a board that does that. The second thing I would say is this: you don't fund a basketball gym before you fund a library, and I think we have to make sure that we have the right library in place before we go to the athletic side. I'm as purple and gold on Saturday night as anyone on this stage, and I love it. But the truth is, we have to fix that library before we start investing state dollars into athletic complexes. The third thing I would say is this. I hate to say this, my LSU brethren, you got to take a page out of Louisiana Tech's playbook. If you go back about 25 years ago, Dan Renault said, you know what we're going to do at Louisiana Tech? We're going to raise our standards, and we're going to be truly excellent at a couple of things, engineering and some others, and we're going to go compete with Georgia Tech and some of our brethren, Texas A&M around us, and they are doing that today in Ruston. LSU needs to do that as well, and I think raise their standards. Go out and say, on the 5 pillars of the Scholarship First agenda, we're not just going to do them, we're going to do them at an excellent level. And if you raise those standards and go target that on private foundation dollars and explain it to the legislature and this governor, you can absolutely take it to another level and compete with our southern peers and become one of those winners in the SEC, not just on the football field, but also in the classroom.
So look, higher ed's almost self-funding themselves now. You know, we've lost 60,000 people in the last 2 years, if you want to check that math. Forget what's happened in the last 10, 2. I said this, and I'll continue to say this. We suffer from our politics. That's just the facts of the matter. Now, I've been coming to Baton Rouge for about the last 15 years. I spent 9.5 in the legislature and now 6 as treasurer. When you manage the money that I manage, you can imagine the phone calls, the meetings, and the requests. Sometimes it hurt my feelings on some of the things I was asked to do. But you see what goes on your campus. I was on campus the other day talking to a class. Our board members are more concerned about everything except you, and that's just a fact. The politics has infected the process. You have to take the politics out of it. The governor needs to get out of the way. The governor needs to select a board that governs the university, make sure the board isn't trying to hire football coaches, fire football coaches, more interested in free tickets and trips than it is from managing the operation, from the infrastructure. I've said it and I'll continue to say this. We suffer from the infrastructure side of government. I don't mean roads and bridges, and those aren't so great either. But we suffer from running the operation. We don't have enough operational people focused on how to run an operation, meaning a business, because it's every bit of a business. But if we don't take the politics out, and if it doesn't start with the governor who takes the politics out and holds his board members accountable to that, then we will continue to have this back and forth. I support President Tate. Find out what his agenda is, and you work as a partner to help him, and you do that throughout all of our universities.
So, I think when you look around the country at the places that are really growing, most of them are around research-based universities. Austin, Texas, Research Triangle in North Carolina, Boston, and then maybe Stanford and Silicon Valley. So I think research-based universities is really our engines that drive growth. They really drive the jobs of tomorrow. So I look at universities like LSU more like an economic development opportunity, not just higher education. And the reason for that is that when you get a professor here who is a top-notch researcher, well, he brings a staff, he brings grant money, he hires other people, he gets grad students to come. The grad students create startups that then grow here organically. So in Louisiana, what we normally do for economic development is we just throw money to try and pay companies to come here. It doesn't work. So what I would do is take that money that we've been throwing at companies that come here for a little while and then leave, take that money and invest it in our research-based universities, make them actually grow organically here, where you can attract the best professors, where you can build advanced laboratory facilities. I brought a bill in the legislature called the SMART bill to basically do this, but it needs the funding. And so I would look at it as more of an economic development opportunity. Build those advanced laboratories. If we would have spent half the money we spent on all of our corporate welfare programs over the last 10 years, if we would have built advanced laboratories here at LSU and in Ruston and at ULL, if we would have built them there, then we would be out-competing any of these other states in the South, but we didn't. We throw it away at companies that don't really use it, and then they go. And so I think focusing on that, attracting great professors, building great facilities for science and technology, and then paying stipends for grad students and matching grants for federal research, I think you make every university really a startup incubator so that you really have the jobs of tomorrow based in these science and technology fields to really grow and to really bring the jobs of the future to Louisiana. And that money's available. We have it. Another thing, we just need to repurpose it, and I think it's something that actually works. And when you look around the country, that's really the model that is attracting people. It's attracting the people from LSU to go there to do research. I think that's what we need to bring here. Thank you.
Many of us agree on the premise of how we can better the institution. I went to college and law school outside of the state. I went to a little college in Mississippi, Millsaps, and I played football. I was too small to play for LSU, but I'm in the Sports Hall of Fame of Millsaps. And then I went to law school, and yes, I was editor of the Law Review. But I chose to come back to Louisiana after working for a federal judge. My younger brother went to law school here. My daughter went to college here, got her master's degree from an LSU institute. So I'm proud of this institution. But our priorities have to be straight, and our priorities got to put academics first. We have to fix the infrastructure. We don't need to fix infrastructure like we haven't fixed our bridges and roads. We need to have priorities, and we need to act and not talk about it. We need to provide the money to fix the library, to fix the other buildings. We need to continue the research program. We have a great research rice institute. We have a great water institute. We are doing great research here, but it's really about priorities on infrastructure, priority on paying teachers, paying our professors, and so they stay here. So we have world-renowned professors here. We've done so much development over the last 50 years here that's we introduced people to the alligator world. We introduced people to the rice world. We've introduced so many other people around this world to what's so great about Louisiana, what came from this institution. So we have to do that. And then when we do that, we're going to have an improvement. We're going to have more people from out of state that want to come here. And when they come here, they're going to want to stay here because they're going to get a good job when they're finished. So recognizing priorities, and believe me, I love the sports. I love the fact that we won the football national championship and the women's basketball national championship, but we've got to get our priorities straight, and it takes the right leadership to do that. I'm more objective than anybody up here about this subject matter, but anyway, I will, as the next governor, will have my influence on the Board of Supervisors to do the right thing, and the President Tate as well.
Funding for higher education in Louisiana has historically suffered, and it's largely for one reason, and it's because we have too much of the state's budget tied up in dedicated funds. Did you know that out of a $20 billion state budget, not including the federal dollars, we have tied up about $4 billion in dedicated funds? That means that those things like the Boll Weevil Fund get their money right off the top. Did you know we eradicated the boll weevil like in the 1980s? But there's still a fund for the Boll Weevil Fund. And so that money goes right off the top. Well, the two big things that don't have dedicated funding is higher education and health care. And so whenever the state has to make budget cuts, they cut higher education and health care. Now, in the last, so let me tell you about dedicated funds. So I have made it my mission to try to eliminate dedicated funds while being in the legislature. I've led a task force for the last 5 years. We have undedicated a lot of funds, about $100 million so far. As governor, I will eliminate the majority of the dedicated funds, make all of those things compete for funding, right, on a level playing field so that the legislature and the governor can choose what the priorities are for that time. So we have to fund higher education through better budgeting. I also agree about research and development. The flagship university needs to be the R&D center of excellence. We're like dead last in the SEC in that way. I have done some work in the legislature to help spur that in the area of hydrogen research. Hydrogen as a renewable fuel provided $7.5 million in state funding. That was matched by another $25 million by Shell to create the Center for Innovative Energy. That's how we bring LSU to the top tier of the SEC, is by funding research and development. Thank you.
All right, staying on education, our fourth topic will focus on public education. Currently, U.S. News and World Report ranks Louisiana 41st in the country for pre-K through 12 education. This is an improvement of 5 places from the previous year's rankings. What are your plans to continue these positive developments and combat the current teacher shortage in Louisiana? Senator Hewitt.
Thank you. I've done a lot of work in the area of education in the legislature, and I think we're on the right track because we know that education is the silver bullet. And basically, if you can't learn, you're not going to earn. And so it starts with early education. We have to fund early education so that children are ready to learn when they go to kindergarten. And then when they get into kindergarten through 3rd grade, we have to make sure those kids learn to read. Half our 3rd graders are not reading on grade level right now when they leave the 3rd grade. I passed a literacy bill that moves us to phonics, back to the basics and how we teach reading. Now Louisiana is one of the only 3 states whose reading scores have improved this last year. I also will tackle math. 4th through 8th grade math skills are dropping, or test scores. We have to go back to teaching the foundational, fundamental skills of math so that those students are ready for algebra. And then we need computer science in every grade level, computer coding in our high schools. We can't keep teaching the same things in high school today that we did when I was in high school, because the job demands and the workforce demands are so much different. It's a high-tech world out there. I don't have to tell you all that. and we have to be more innovative in delivering the workforce through our education pipeline that leads to those good, high-paying jobs right here in Louisiana. And I also believe that we have to pay our teachers. Teachers need to be paid at or above the Southern average, because teachers, without a highly qualified teacher in the classroom, you're never going to deliver a good education. And then lastly, I think that parents need more choices in how they educate their kids. I'm the product of public schools. Our sons were raised in public schools. My mother was a public school teacher, and we have to have a strong public school system. But for those students that don't learn well in the public schools, we need to offer the parents other options, and I think that we can do that. Thank you.
I come from a family of educators. My grandfather was a high school football coach and a math teacher. My mother was a kindergarten teacher and a college professor. My sister was a retired kindergarten teacher. My daughter is a teacher. We have to start with 3-year-olds. We know that the pre-K funding is so important, not kindergarten. 3-year-olds, 80% of the brain is formed by the time they're 3, 90% by the time they're 4. And so we know if you're in the 3rd grade and you're not reading well and writing well, I say you're in the pipeline to prison. And so we know that illiteracy matches up with incarceration. And even those, when we look at education, we talk about our prison, we want people, 80% of the prison population is going back into the community. So we want them to be able to read, write. We want them to be able to have a GED, maybe have a trade, so they can earn a living and be a productive citizen in society. But going back to kindergarten, to 3-year-olds, that is so important that we fund pre-K as far as 3-year-olds. And so I watched a little film of my 3-year-old grandson today in kindergarten. My daughter-in-law sent it to me so I could have a little joy today watching that child. But it's important, and we got to pay our teachers. We don't pay our teachers. We're 40-something in the national teacher pay. We don't pay our law enforcement. We're 48th in paying law enforcement. We're dead last in paying firemen. So how do we expect everybody else in the country to respect us when we don't take care of the people that take care of us? And that's our teachers. And I've also said repeatedly, we got to get rid of the LEAP test. We spend so much time, we're one of 4 or 5 states that focuses on the LEAP test. We take kids out of the classroom and they spend umpteen weeks prepared to take a test instead of learning. So I've made that a big issue. We will better our education. We will educate our children. They will be productive members in society if we do those things. Thank you.
So everybody talks about education. I'm the only one here who actually has kids in the public schools. So it's not something I talk about. It's something my wife and I live every day. It's very important for us because it's our kids, it's their future that's on the line too. So in the legislature, I focus on a couple of things in education that I think are really critical. First is literacy. We found this out because my own kids had problems with literacy going to public school, so we said, well, what can we do about it? Well, we look next door to Mississippi, and how would you know it that Mississippi's actually kicking our butt in literacy, especially elementary literacy. And so Mississippi in 2013 had a bill. They said, look, we're going to fix the problem here. If you can't read at the end of 3rd grade, we're going to hold kids back. We're going to give them extra training, extra tutoring so that they can read before they move on. I passed that bill this year in the legislature. It's going to be implemented over the next 2 years. As a result of that bill, Mississippi, from 2013 till today, they've gone from 49th in the country, which was one step below us, to 21st. So that completely changed the environment there. It's something that a policy that works in a state very similar to us. I think that's going to be very important, and as long as it's implemented correctly, I'll do that as governor. I think the other thing that we have to focus on is elementary or early childhood education. Kids, when they're young, that's really, they need to walk into kindergarten already knowing their letters, already knowing their numbers, already knowing their colors, knowing how to play with kids is very important, and I think that's one of the best things we can do to really end these generational poverty gaps in Louisiana, is to get kids, especially lower income ones, ready to walk into kindergarten. We need to focus on early child education as a way to fix that. We need high quality teachers. We don't just need to pay them more, we do, but we need to raise the standards for teachers. There's no education system in the world that quality exceeds the quality of its teachers. So there's no other way around that. We need the best people becoming teachers, valedictorians. We need them to go in the classroom, and we need them to teach the next generation. And I think the last thing we need to look at is truancy. You know, we have 43% of our kids aren't even showing up to school. 43% are truant. It doesn't matter what system you have. If they're not there, it's not going to matter. And so I think we need to focus on making sure that we follow the data, we get those kids to school so that they can learn and they can grow. If we don't do that, it doesn't matter. So those are the things that I focus on. I think education is one of those fundamental issues we have to fix.
Look, as a former law enforcement veteran, and my wife's a retired school teacher and principal, look, there's not a bigger issue that we face in this state as our education. You have to understand, out of 4.6 million people, 2 million of them on Medicaid. We have 900,000 on Medicare. We're a very poor state. We lead the nation in per capita amount of federal money we get in. We're second in poverty. But this is really about priorities. If we would treat our education system the same way we do athletics in Louisiana, we would have one of the top education systems in the world. But we don't. We'd rather play football and basketball and some of the other things, and we've just turned that focus towards education and make it a priority. Now look, you got a couple legislators in here, and I think we wasted a tremendous opportunity this past year. We could have created some trust funds. We had so much extra money this year that we may never see again. But what happened? Pet projects wasted on non-state priorities. Nothing personal. He could have done what he just said. About $1 billion was wasted, in my opinion. We're a poor state. We want to be like Texas, but we don't want to act like Texas. If you want to be like Texas, then you need to do some of the things Texas does. If you want to be like Florida and North Carolina, then you need to do some of the things they do. As I tell my staff all the time, if you want to be great, go find out where it's being great already. This is about priorities. But if we're going to improve education, we have to support our teachers. I will find permanent funding to do that. We need to allow them to restore discipline in their classrooms. Early childhood is absolutely paramount. Parental choice is incredibly important, and we're expecting our teachers to raise our children today. That wasn't meant to do that. Just read the Bible. You know, you're asking teachers to do what God meant 2 parents to do. So that is a major, major problem that only through spiritual help can we fix.
I do think when you talk to teachers today, they feel like they're being asked to be a Swiss Army knife every single day. Teachers, a lot of them went to the profession because they love to teach. They love to kind of like take a young person and mold them into a great young adult. And now they're asked to also be a guidance counselor, a mental health advocate, a parent in many ways. It's unfair expectation we have for them. So, and the reason why is because of the breakdown of some of the family unit, but also over the last couple of years after the government shutdowns, kids came back with some mental health issues and also so drastically behind in some of the schooling. That's such a catch-up mission. We're having a breaking point for our teachers, so we have to take some of that burden off their back, put some of those wraparound services in the school, and let them get back to what they love doing, which is teaching young people the curriculum that they know about. The other piece is, over the years, we've looked at a failing school system in Louisiana, and we've tried to force every kid into a little 4-year college box. And we graded schools on, do you put them in 4-year college? If so, check. If not, X. That's the wrong way to look at it. We have to bend the bureaucracy to meet the needs of where kids are. Kids are going to naturally progress onto like 4 different pathways, either on a 4-year college track, a 2-year college track, a straight to the workforce track, or this 4th category. Maybe by the time they get to high school, they're still struggling with mental health, drug abuse. Maybe they're so drastically behind they need some help. We have to reward schools for doing a great job of meeting each kid where they are as compared to jamming them in some little box that the government puts for them. You know, I was on a school board, 2 school boards actually. One is the Emerge School for Autism, where we take young kids and we try to prepare them for mainstream schools, and one in high school in North Baton Rouge here, Cristo Rey, where we try to take kids from low-income areas and give them a college career prep and internship skills. I've learned so much in dealing on both ends of that spectrum, and what I've learned more than anything else is you can't just force every kid to be the same type of box. You have to bend and meet them where they are, and we have to have an accountability system and an MFP formula that incentivizes and encourages the type of partnerships these schools need to meet kids and give them an elevated path to success.
You know, today LSU announced that they had brought in over $400 million in research. That was because of a teacher at some point in some professor's life. My wife is a 23-year educator. She is that Swiss Army knife because we expect teachers to do that, but teachers do that on their own because they love the children they work with. They want to grow and create leaders and beings and people. So yeah, teachers are that Swiss Army knife. But you know what? We don't respect them. We don't pay them enough. The idea that when we talk about teachers, we just go to the average. And I said this on the campaign trail. When you go to the Southern Regional average or the national average, you're just at the top of the bottom half. Our teachers deserve more. Our children deserve more. If we want a first-class education, let's pay for it. You can't drink champagne on a Kool-Aid budget. Let's pay for it if we really believe in what that is. You know, the idea that I have a 3-year-old in early childhood education today in French immersion in public school. I have a 4-year-old. She just turned 5, I'm sorry. She was in pre-K. She's in French immersion, also in a public school. Guess what? We need to fund that program for the other 159,000 children across the state of Louisiana. I'm going to be a governor that's going to fully fund and work to fund education at the highest levels it's ever been because our children deserve that. They don't vote, but they deserve our respect and they deserve our attention. I've heard from rural communities to urban communities the difficulty of being able to go to work, missing work because they need a good place to put their kids. We are failing our children when we don't invest in education. Let's work with those Swiss Army knives. Let's raise their salary and index it so it keeps up with inflation. We all talk about a business principle. That is a business principle because my phone bill goes up, my gas bill goes up, my insurance damn well went up. We ought to make sure we pay our teachers the same way and give them the raises that they deserve. And not a one-time stipend. Not a one-time stipend. That is what we did with $2 billion. It's an insult. Let's invest in our children and let's do it the right way and get out of the teacher's way.
All right, our final topic of the night's a bit of a pivot. We're going to focus on crime in Louisiana. Crime rates, including violent crime, have been a recurring issue in our cities. Baton Rouge, New Orleans, and Shreveport frequently appear in the top spots in some national murder rankings. Could you please outline your comprehensive strategy for reducing crime rates in these cities? And what specific policies do you plan to implement to address the root causes of this issue and create safer environments for our residents? Dr. Wilson.
Just yesterday, we had a murder at school in St. Helena, a little small town of only about 10,000 people. The reality is our chief law enforcement officer said the problem was only New Orleans, Baton Rouge, and Shreveport, but tell that to the mother and the father or the family that are bearing a kid and 2 others that are in critical care. We have a problem in this state. We need to address it collectively, and we don't do that by dividing and conquering. I'm not going to be a governor that's going to point fingers. I'm going to extend a hand. I'm going to use every resource we have to invest in technology, to invest in resources to make sure our law enforcement community and our justice community have what they need. We need to make sure that we invest in early childhood education because guess what? That reduces crime going forward. We've got to be thoughtful. We've got to be sustainable. We need to invest in juvenile assessment centers. We need to invest in counselors in our school systems and not just school resource officers. We need to understand the reality of what this is and fund the systems that we need. We have problems all across the state. No community is void of it. But without a whole-of-government approach, without working together, we will not get there. Whether it's substance abuse, whether it's mental illness, whatever it is, we have to be able to work together. And as a governor of this state, I can't tell you that state police can fix all those problems, but we can use our state police at the best and highest use. We can support local law enforcement to make sure that they have the augmentation that they need. We can make sure that we protect people where they need to be protected, whether that's on the internet, under a bridge, or in a neighborhood. Those are things that we have to look at in terms of investing in well-rounded communities, providing all of those support services. It starts at the top, and it's going to work its way through. Making sure that we address juvenile crime is a big thing. But guess what? It's got to take an entire community, faith-based, nonprofit, professionals in the university setting, psychologists, sociologists, judges, district attorneys, all of them. And we've got to pay folks to do their jobs. You can't ask a police officer to do it on what we're paying them today. We've got to address these old problems with new ways, and that is what you will get with the Wilson administration.
We have to stop fumbling the launch point for kids. This high school redesign piece is so critical. Right now, what we do is if a kid can find a way to make themselves prepared for a four-year college, that's great. Maybe they show up at LSU, or maybe they drift to Texas. If a kid can't, they drift. Maybe they drift to crime. Maybe they drift to a low-wage job, which makes them frustrated and either flirt with crime or live in poverty. Either way, they drift. We have to do a better job at the high school redesign. That will stop some of the criminal element that we see turning to that sometimes out of necessity. The other piece is we're short on law enforcement on the street. We need more cops. And the truth is you have to find police, you have to train them, you have to pay them. That is absolutely what we need at the state police level. We have to help our local authorities have the same thing. Technology is another piece that the state can help with their surplus dollars. Body cams, license plate readers, street side cams in high traffic areas, high crime areas, high tourism areas. We can prove those cases, put the bad guys away without having to ask some poor family to testify when they're scared to death to do so. We also have to realize there's a juvenile crisis in this state. In the post-COVID era, when all those kids were sent home, it's not just the education backlog we have to deal with, but the gangs aren't stupid. They recruited the kids. And right now, if you talk to any sheriff's officer in the state, they will tell you that the 14 to 20-year-old kids are committing some pretty violent crimes these days because the gangs know if that kid gets picked up, there's nowhere to bring them. You can't throw them in adult jail. It's a catch and release program, and we've got to stop the cycle. That means regional facilities that can intake these juveniles and put them in a setting where they're off the street, but also they're detained and retrained, either with a GED or mental health or whatever it takes to get them back into society. The last piece is our cities need to know the state is going to step in if they won't do their job. In New Orleans, the French Quarter is out of control. It's not the same place we grew up going to. If they can't clean it up, the state needs to do it. Billy Nungesser rolled out the idea at some point of turning that into a state park so we can do the security there for them if they won't do it. I like that idea. And when you talk to the employers in that district, they say, give us help because the city won't do their job. The governor has to be the backstop if the locals won't do it.
So my first career was in law enforcement. My degree's in criminal justice. I am the only one sitting up here that's actually done this at a very high level. Only a retina injury when I was about 29 changed the course of my entire life. Law enforcement is about partnerships. It's about priorities. It's about investment, constantly changing. It evolves daily, weekly. It's a moving target constantly. But you got to send a message to the criminals, and that's just the bottom line. It's a culture. But as a governor, you can only do so much. But let's just start with the state police. We'll have the best troop in America. I will hold my command staff accountable. I know what it looks like. I know what they should be doing, and I know what they shouldn't be doing. You have to invest. You have to educate. But you also have to hold them accountable because that's what you deserve. You deserve accountability. When you make a mistake, and we've made some tragic ones, you better deal with it and deal with it swiftly. But you know, I tell people they get sort of lost when I talk about crime sometimes because it's not about putting people in jail. It's turned into that, especially in Louisiana. Our mental health problems at crisis level. What happens to many of those? They wind up in prison. Or our jails. Our jails are full with people with mental health. When's the last time you've been one of our bridges in New Orleans, where I'm from? Many of those are veterans who have VA benefits, but they're mentally ill, okay? You wouldn't believe that they want to be out there, but I've been out there with them. I spent a lot of time with veterans. But it's more about deterring the crime and preventing the crime. So you have to fight this on multiple fronts. But you got to send a strong message. These are our streets, our communities, our neighborhoods, and if you want to commit a crime, you're going to have to do it someplace else. But you have to support your law enforcement. And I mean, you got to put your money where your mouth is.
So crime, I think, has a short-term and a long-term solution. The short term, we need more cops. You know, New Orleans has historically low levels of police. The state police also is at historically low levels. The legislature this year raised the supplemental pay for local law enforcement. We also raised the pay for state troopers. I think we just had a very large state trooper class, so hopefully we'll be able to get those numbers up. I, as governor, would use those state troopers to go and augment these high crime areas to offload some of the local police so they're free to go do other patrols. I think that's necessary to really address it from a state level. The second thing I think you can do is throw resources at the state crime lab, which processes a lot of the evidence. I think there's lots of backlogs there. Swift and certain justice is something you need if you really want to deter crime. And if you have, you got to wait a year to process a murder sample, then that's not going to happen. So I think you can use resources to clear up that backlog. I think we need more juvenile facilities. That's obvious. I mean, I think if you go around the state, there's not enough room, not enough beds to put juvenile offenders. You can't put them in adult jail. That's not going to solve the problem. Some people throw that out there as an answer, but that's not going to solve the problem. That'll take them and make them a career criminal. What you need to do is have them in juvenile facilities that can really treat whatever issues they're having, really provide them education, and get them back so that they can become productive members of society. And then I think you got to look at the long-term issues. I mean, Louisiana has been the murder capital of the world, or murder capital of America for, I think, since 1989. So it's been a long time. This isn't a new issue. But why is that? Well, we're the poorest state with some of the worst education, right? Lack of quality education, lack of economic opportunity, that's really what drives crime. And if you don't solve those two problems, you will not be able to hire enough police, you will not be able to build enough prisons to solve this problem. And so I think you really have to focus on things like the elementary literacy bill that I talked about to make sure that all third graders can read. That will change the course of some of this. I think you really have to have economic opportunity. If you don't have a job, if you can't feed your family, there's not a lot you can do except turn to crime. And so those are the things, the underlying issues that have been in Louisiana for generations, that if we don't solve that, then, like I said, you're never going to have enough prisons, you're never going to have enough police. Thank you.
We've said education, poverty, and crime are all linked. And if we can cure poverty in this state, we can get rid of crime. And we do it with education. Most of your drug dealing in Louisiana takes place in impoverished neighborhoods, in blighted neighborhoods. That's where most of your crime takes place. I was in Smiley's in New Orleans East the other day, and one of a city council member, a big man, said, "Are you willing as the next governor to call in the National Guard to help New Orleans? These people won't help." And I said, well, that would be the last thing, because we don't need to give the state another black eye at all. I said, but we could come together, we can meet together, we can have the mayors, the DAs, the sheriffs, the city police, the chiefs of police, and the legislatures all come up with a plan. We can do maybe what New York did in 1990 when they had the worst crime in America. They had a program called Window Breakers, and they went after the young criminals to keep them from before they become major criminals. Right now, we've got young kids being groomed by major criminals. And for lack of better words, I'll call it trafficked. This 14-year-old that shot these people in St. Helena that he was talking about, and incidentally, you weren't willing to come up to the gubernatorial conference that they offered for us just a few weeks ago in St. Helena to talk to them about what we wanted to do. So as a governor, I'm going to be a doer, not a talker. And so we're going to act. But poverty can be cured with education. Crime can be reduced with education. And so we can have a windows breaker program like they did in New York, and they turned it back into a great tourist city when they reduced the crime. So they go after the small crimes and they get to the big criminals. And that's what we have to do. We have to save these young kids. We can do a gun sweep with illegal guns on the street, get them out of these kids' hands, find the people that are giving it to them, and we'll stop the crime. So it takes a doer, an actor, a plan to get it accomplished. Thank you.
The underlying problem with crime is drugs, education, and mental health. We've talked a lot about education tonight. Mental health, we are severely, severely, severely underfunding. And we're doing some pilot programs in St. Tammany right now, mental health, that I hope will be kind of a role model for the rest of the state. Drugs is another issue, and one of the biggest concerns right now is fentanyl. And everywhere I go and speak about fentanyl, there's almost always someone that stands up in the crowd and says, I lost my son, niece, you name it, to fentanyl. And you all probably know someone also that has overdosed on fentanyl. We passed legislation this year that I authored and co-authored to increase severely the penalties for first, second, and third offenders that are either dealing fentanyl, or they're creating fentanyl counterfeit pills through these clandestine labs, we call them. It's a kitchen with a blender and a pill press. Y'all, these are so dangerous. And we are working, as we did with heroin decades ago, to tell the dealers, we do not want you in Louisiana. Because you all know, just as I do, fentanyl is 50 times more deadly than heroin. A few grains makes a huge difference. And you don't know what you're getting into when you're buying these counterfeit pills. And so we are working legislatively to throw the book at the people that are running those labs and the dealers so that we get fentanyl off our streets, because one decision can be a bad decision and it could be your very first time. I'm very proud to have sponsored that bill this year, and I'm going to make sure we get that fully implemented. We also have to work on our overall criminal justice system. All our different agencies don't communicate. The right hand doesn't know what the left hand's doing. That's why we're releasing some prisoners too early and we're keeping some too long, because we don't have the technology in place to manage all that. And I'm going to invest in the technology so that we get our system up and running and better able to manage our offender population.
All right, that concludes our topics for tonight. So let's wrap up with each candidate's closing statement. You have 1 minute to deliver your closing statement, and we will begin with Senator Hewitt.
Well, thank y'all again so much for having us tonight. Y'all have been a very patient audience. We've covered a lot of topics. You have one of the most important decisions ahead of you, because I think our state's at a turning point. And we are all auditioning for the job. We're interviewing for the most important job in the state's history. And so I would ask you to look at each of us in terms of what we have accomplished and what we have done, not just the talk, because it's easy to talk and to sound, what I'm going to do, what I'm going to do, what I'm going to do when I'm governor. But look at our record and what we have already done as an indicator of what we will do. I have accomplished a lot in my professional career, working for the #1 company in the Fortune 500, one of the only females, the highest ranking females in the company at that time. I got the Lifetime PTA Service Award as a PTA volunteer, Legislator of the Year. I'm ready to go to work for you as governor, and I'm going to deliver. Go to SharonHewitt.com, and you can read about the Hewitt blueprint on all the things that I plan to do. Thank you very much.
I left off a minute ago on the window breakers policy in New York that reduced the crime, the fact that they raised the minimum wage. And I've said we've always got to raise the minimum wage if we want to help these single moms in the state. 800,000 single parent families in Louisiana. 70% of children going to public schools today are coming from economically disadvantaged households. 70%. So what are we going to do about it? We got to attack poverty, and we do that with the education. We have to let counselors be counselors for these children, because some of them are coming out of second and third generation poverty. So I've always said that education, poverty, and crime are linked, because we reduce incarceration with education, we get rid of poverty with education, and what changes the perception of Louisiana. So we're not going to, in 4 years from now, we just won't have one Fortune 500 company in Louisiana. We'll have more than one. I'll tell you that right now. And so you can check me out on hunterlundy.com or lundyforlouisiana.com and check out and make the determination if I should be your governor. I'm different from all of these, and I want your vote. God bless.
So I'm 37 years old. I'm an Eagle Scout, an engineer, an attorney, a former diplomat, and a state legislator. I don't waste my time. And Louisiana doesn't have a lot of time. I'm the only one that's offered fundamental change that says we're going to tear down 100 years of Huey Long-style government and we're going to bring to Louisiana a system that actually works. I'm the only one that is offering that. Now, if this were LSU football, if we lost to every team every year, we would fire the coach, we would fire the trainers, we would even fire the mascot. But in in Louisiana, we continue to send the same politicians running the same plays year after year and expecting different results. Now, if you're happy losing 40,000 people a year, if you're happy with the current system, then vote for anybody else. You got lots of choices. I think there's 16 people in the race altogether. But If you think you deserve the 4 years of your life back, if you think you deserve that 33% raise, then vote for me, Richard Nelson. Thank you very much, everybody. Thanks for having me tonight.
So you can go to the heart doctor who just got out of school, or you go to the heart doctor that's got 37, 38 years of experience. This is about experience. This is about leadership. I'm not talking, I don't come here telling you I'm going to change. I'm not a change agent. I'm here to tell you I've done it. Get on Google tonight and read. I agree, it is about experience. 10 years in law enforcement and military, 30 plus years in business managing multi-million-dollar operations. I have hired and helped create thousands of jobs in this state. I spent 9.5 years under 2 different governors, learned a lot. Some I liked, some I didn't. I've been your treasurer for 6 years. You're not going to find a negative article on our operation. We've done a solid job. I could bring that to the whole state of Louisiana very easily. But at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, we suffer from a culture of cronyism and corruption. I've never misspent a penny a dollar. I've never taken an illegal trip. I've never taken a hunting trip. There's nothing. Every decision I make is always what is best for the citizens of Louisiana. And most of those decisions are made when the doors are closed. So think about that.
Thank you for your attention and time tonight. And we've talked about a lot of important issues, but there's one important issue we have not talked about. And I think maybe it's the most critical one facing the state. It is, how do we deal with the culture of low expectations that is plaguing Louisiana? Too many people have lost faith that everything will ever change. They don't think Louisiana can get out of its own way and stop tripping over its own shoelaces. I refuse to believe that. And I think in this election cycle, it'll be a real good temperature check of where the people of this state are. This is our moment in time. This is a time to rewrite our script, but it doesn't happen without new leadership that has a different approach. Look, I have lots of opinions on lots of things, and I'll be glad to sit here all night and talk to you about it. But I also have a concept when it comes to leadership. You start by listening. And the truth is, I will be more than an open-door governor. I will be one that is out into your communities, talking to you on a day-to-day basis, because I know I'm always one conversation away from learning a different perspective, understanding another viewpoint, and incorporating it into the greater good. That's how I want to lead for you so we can finally rewrite our story and script once and for all. waxforla.com.
Thank you all for having us. Thank you for hosting us. Leaders show up. Leaders show up. Leaders don't back down. They don't find a back door. You don't have to ever worry about that with Shawn Wilson, because Shawn Wilson shows up. I've shown up for 25 years under Republican and Democratic governors, always doing what's right, always doing what's best, always with results, with integrity, with transparency, with a commitment to getting it right by working together. The issues of higher education, education in general, you deserve someone who understands and listens, someone who values what that experience has been, someone who has a plan to address it and a capacity to follow that plan and deliver the results. That is what you get with a Shawn Wilson. You don't have to worry about the mistakes of the past. You don't have to worry about the sound bites. You don't have to worry about the non-sustainable solutions that people will talk about but not really be about. Look at my record. Compare my record. Compare my 25 years in government doing the work of the people. I'm the guy that's going to work to make you safer, smarter, healthier, and wealthier. And you can learn more at wilsonforla.com. God bless you. Thank you all for having me.
All right, let's get one final round of applause for all of our candidates this evening. We'd like to thank LSU for hosting us tonight, and make sure you vote. Go Vote will be hosting a voter registration drive for LSU students on September the 19th. Thank you and have a great evening.